it's Sunday morning and I need to read a lot today because I have some books on the go. I just need to start finishing them because I am way behind on my 30 in 30 challenge, 30 in 30 attempt. So the book I'm reading today is Western Lane by Chetna Maroo. This is centering on a story of a family, three daughters and their father, and their attempts, I guess the father's attempt to make the youngest daughter a squash champion. So Western Lane seems to be the place where they practice squash. They're Pakistani and Jain, and their interactions with the people that they're meeting at the Western Lane courts, they're not all Pakistani people. So this is gonna be my first book from the Booker long list, so very excited. New book haul. Penguin Random House just sent me a package. Is this an influencer mailing? I hope so. Yes, these are two books that I requested. When We Were Sisters by Fatima Asghar and An American Immigrant by Joanna Rojas Van. You know me, I love an American immigrant story. So the author is a second generation Colombian immigrant, and this one doesn't have an author picture, so we're gonna have to check out the author's Instagram to see what she looks like. But very excited to get these. Thank you, Penguin Random House. Oh, look, Peppa is entertaining her friends. It is Freddy Fox and Edmund Elephant. And where's Peppa?
Hello, I'm Peppa Pig.
So it is Sunday afternoon. Yes, love. Yes, love.
It's $100.
It's $100.
The food is $100.
$100. Okay. So it's Sunday afternoon, and I have not finished the book that I thought I was going to finish. So I'm still reading Western Lane, and it's more about the relationship between three girls and their father after the loss of their mother. So I don't know, like right now. Yes, baby. Okay. Your book now, you're okay? Can I see it? Let me see your book. There you go. She has her book now, she's okay. So it's Sunday afternoon. Why does the camera want to see your book? Everybody wants to see your book. This is a bookish channel, and we all want to see all the books that everybody else is reading. So it's Sunday afternoon, and I thought I would be finished my book by now, and I'm not. So I'm still reading Western Lane, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm still questioning, like I always do with these Booker books. Yes, you can do another page. I always question whether these books are Booker books. They're three sisters. One's 10, one's 13, one's 15, and they're being trained by the father to become squash champions. That is his goal, so he's working on them, and it kind of makes you think about the Venus and Serena story with tennis. Yeah. And I'm liking it, but I don't know if it's a Booker, if it's what I would consider to be a Booker book. Just because the focus so far has been on how this family copes with the loss of the mother. So I will check in again when I'm done. Yeah, he's coming back. So I'll check in again when I'm done, and whether or not I like it more. I still have about 50 pages to go. So dinner tonight from Outback Steakhouse. So I finished Western Lane by Chetna Maroo. This is her debut. And while this may not have been the big political discussion that I was expecting from a Booker contender, I liked it. I liked it a lot more now that I'm finished and I'm able to look back on the story as a whole. I like it more now than I did while I was reading it. And I think that happens. So the reviews call this a sports novel combined with a coming-of-age story, and I agree. We're reading about a 10-year-old and her two older sisters who are 13 and 15 as they and their father deal with the loss of the mom and how they use sports as a vehicle to carry their emotion. So we see we see them react to the loss of the mother in very different ways, as each one either tries to fill in the void with their actions, or widen the void inadvertently. I don't want to say too much about the story, but I really enjoyed how the author uses the sports, how she incorporates the training process and the grueling efforts, and just how that is used to show the process that these family members have to go through. There are some very interesting moments here, some very interesting conversations. There's a point where something very profound is happening, and I like how the characters ask themselves and ask each other, like, what happens after this? We never expected to get to this point. And while it is important in the story, it's also an important question that we can see characters grapple with in stories, in any kind of story, but we can see ourselves asking that question too, right? So, yeah, like I said, this was not the big political allegory that I was expecting, but it does touch on some very interesting and important topics. The universal topic of suffering, and how people mourn, how people deal with grief, about cultural differences and cultural isolationism, and how we see those tendencies in some cultures maybe more than others. I really like how the author presents some of those big topics, but doesn't delve into them completely. Like, we see them as the background. It becomes one of those things that the characters are dealing with, but they don't talk about it explicitly. It's not a big plot point. It's just there in the background, helping to form who these characters are and how they act. So I really like this. I like this a lot more now that I'm finished than I did while I was reading it. So I don't know. So I finished another book. I finished Don Delillo's The Silence, which has an incredibly low rating on Goodreads. It has an average of 2.6 or something stars, which I understand, even though I really liked it. The book is set in one evening, February 2022, Super Bowl Sunday. The event where a lot of regular life gets silenced because we're all tuned into the big game. And so this one imagines that there is something that happens, and we're not able to tune into that big game, and so there is silence, or what would be silence from the entertainment, but it forces us to reach within. It forces us to fill that silence with the thoughts that we have about this thing and about all the other things. So in this book, we're reading about 5 characters who are supposed to gather, and what happens on their way to gathering, and then what happens when they do gather, with the original intention of watching the Super Bowl, but then what they do instead to fill the time, and how they process their thoughts about what is happening. Very interesting, because it is not unlike the book that I just finished, it is not about Super Bowl at all. It is not about football, even though there are football mentions. So one of the characters is a retired physics professor, a woman, and another of the characters is one of her former students. And one of the things that former student talks about is Einstein's theory of relativity, time-bending episode, time folding back on itself. And it is really interesting for that jaunt into physics conversations, which those of us who love that in college probably still love that in books. But I understand that's not for everybody, because not everyone enjoys reading about science. I tell you, I love books that are about science but aren't science fiction. This is my first Don Delillo book, and I definitely want to read more from him. But I also want to encourage other people to check out this book. It's short, and it needs better ratings on Goodreads. So pick up The Silence by Don Delillo if you can, and if you are intrigued by anything that I just said. So yeah. Finished another book for 30 in 30. So can we finish another book in this vlog? Let's see. And I know that I'm behind on my reading. I am in danger of not finishing my 30 in 30 challenge. But can we just take a minute and look at what I have accomplished? I've read all of these books so far this month, and all of these are books that I started in August and have finished in August. So very, very proud of my accomplishment. And also, all of these came from the library. So you don't have to ask if I have a lot of books checked out, right? So I think I want to just keep them until the end of the month just to see how far this stack can go. But for now, let's just pause and celebrate. So I remember now why I never finished this. I started reading this during Caribathon, and I just knew that this was a book that I wanted to spend a lot of quality time with. So I didn't read it. I didn't get further than the first maybe 2 pages or so, because in the opening story, Jonathan Escoffery is talking about what it is like to be a child of immigrant parents, Jamaican immigrant parents specifically, and feeling different, being called different by other people, and not wanting to be different, wanting to be like everybody else, and by that he means American. And not the American that is the melting pot, but to be authentically American, where nobody questions where you are from and what your background is and so on. So in a lot of ways, that means, in the American experience, that means white, right? To be that homogenous type of American, where nobody questions where you're from because everybody just assumes you're from here. In this first story, he's describing growing up in Florida in the 1980s, and your parents speak different because they speak the dialect of Jamaica, which is called patois. I felt the emotion behind what he was writing, an anecdote that is funny, just to read, but also very profound to think about. And so I remember when I started reading this book, I said, I don't want to read this at a time when I'm reading a lot of other books about Caribbean experience. I want to read this one on its own. So I am only 6 pages in, and I can tell you already I'm going to really enjoy this. So I'm going to spend some time today and just read this. So if I don't check in until when I'm done, that's why. Because I'm really over here just enjoying If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery. Let's go, Ted. Why are you sitting in that box? I'm not, says Ted. Can't you see? I'm whizzing along in my speedy race car. Broom, broom, broom. Let's go, Ted. Are you still racing in your car? Oh, no, says Ted. Can't you see? I am digging a hole in my bright yellow digger.
Mommy, where?
Dig, dig, dig.
Where's the word dig?
Dig. Dig. Digga, dig, dig.
Where's the word hole?
Hole? Right here. H-O-L-E, hole.
Oh.
I'm digging a hole in my bright yellow digger, exploring all the oceans in my shiny submarine. Bloop, 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 bloop. Let's go, Ted. Hello.
Hello, I'm still driving.
Can't you see? I'm in my spaceship to the moon, but I'll be back in time for lunch.
I'll be back in time for lunch.
Yeah.
Ouchie. A little egg lay on the leaf.
A little egg lay on the leaf?
Yes, it's just a story.
That sounds like the story from The Hungry Caterpillar.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the book that you're reading?
No.
No, different book, but same story?
Yes.
Okay.
Every month, I keep cheeky bubble gaga. Oh. And I sting, moody steal, I steal,
So I'm changing my prediction. Before I read any of the Booker books, I told you that I think Ayobami Adebayo's book is going to win just because of the Stay With Me reference in Ezio Dujian's speech or her statement. But then I read If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery, and I'm changing my prediction because I think this is a book that's going to win. Or maybe that's just me saying this is a book that I want to win, having read 2 of the 13 books. But this book is brilliant. So this is the book I want to win at this point. This is my second of 13, but this is an unmistakable 5-star read. I loved it, and I think you will too, because Jonathan Escoffery in this book captures the ambiguity of blackness, the ambiguity of racial obscurity when you have lots of different backgrounds, lots of different ethnic backgrounds, and people struggle to put you in a category because putting you in a category is how we process the world. And when people can't do that, they get uncomfortable and they have to pass off that discomfort or uncomfort to you in some way. And so in this book, Jonathan Escoffery talks about men, primarily men, and the women in their lives, but 3 men. He's centering on 3 boys, siblings and a cousin, and the family that births them, the family that leaves Jamaica in the 1980s because of political turmoil and settles in the United States, or at least attempts to settle in the United States, and what that means for the original immigrants, what that means for their children, both the children who are transplanted and the children who are born here in America and want to be American but struggle with what being American means. So it centers on the immigrant experience and the legacy of immigrant identity in American born children, but it also explores manhood and what it means to struggle with your father when your father doesn't feel like you're enough like him, and what it would mean if you were like your parent, the parent who raised you. So man, do I love this book. This writing is bright and it's captivating and it's immersive and it's linked to stories. So each of the stories has a punchline, has a natural break to the story before you pick up the continuation of the story or the exploration of someone else who's related, their take on the story or their input to the story. So I think linked stories was definitely the way to do this because it allows us to move back and forth following different characters as the focus. And I love that the first 2 stories are written in second person, which I absolutely enjoy in books. It wasn't something that I thought was possible, but I love it when I see it, and Escoffery does it really well here, where he includes the reader in that experience. So I don't know, maybe this book was just written for me. I love it. The author is Jamaican background, and I love how he discusses not knowing how to introduce himself, not knowing how to present himself, whether he is Jamaican or not. And you see other people asking that question as well. And because me, my husband, and our daughter will probably have that question asked of us in many iterations, I love how this author gives us a place to just kind of reflect on what those questions mean, what the trying to arrive at an answer means, and the hilarity of it, because at its core this book is questioning, but it's also lighthearted. It's tough, it's deep, it's profound, but it's also lighthearted because there are some comedic moments. And so yeah, this is a book I want to win at this point. So I don't know if after reading any of the 11 other books on the long list, whether that will change. But for right now, I'm gonna say, regardless of what happens with the Booker Prize, definitely read this book. I'm so sorry it's taken me so long to finally have read it, but now that I have, I'm gonna be touting this everywhere. If I Survive You, Jonathan Escoffery.
maybe the next time we talk about this book, it will be to wish him congratulations on the booker. But regardless, read this book. So that's the end of this video, I think. More content being saved for the next video, because man, I plan to make these videos short and then they just go on and on and on. But thank you so much for watching. Would love to hear from you, how you're doing, what your reading has been like, and we'll check in with the Run Write Read Summer Reading Challenge maybe in a couple of days. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this experience with me. Would love to hear from you in the comments. Until we come back for another video, happy reading. Bye.